This is a brief test. I can see, Philip, that I have music, and I can see the screen now. Just another test of our system for those outside of the room. We're confirming our options with audio. If I could get confirmation from our SLC TV team. Thanks everyone for your patience, Mr. Chair. The audio is live and broadcasting now.
Be able to reconvene. It seems like we might be able to reconvene the meeting of the RDA Board of Directors. We were on comments to the board, and now it is your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you everyone for letting us ensure that all the platforms that we broadcast from are available. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Christina Robb. I am in official capacity, the chair of the East Liberty Park Community Organization. I come to you today mostly in the capacity of just a human. As you're aware, I was elected to my official position to further the agendas of the renters, the single mothers, the Medicaid recipients, and other underserved communities I have had the pleasure of serving in my unofficial capacity over the last couple of decades. In fact, I often feel at odds with my peers who are, and rightly so, concerned with their personal investment and property values regarding land use issues in Salt Lake City. Last night, I had the great fortune to walk into a room of highly passionate homeowners, landowners, developers, all excited about the prospect of Ballpark Next. It was wonderful, totally infectious. I love the push by the neighborhood advocates to keep this project on the forefront of Salt Lake redevelopment document, and the marketing is clearly infectious. I mean, it was really exciting to be there last night. However, I'm still waiting to be informed how the redevelopment of this fabulous property is going to be realized in a public benefit to families. Will it embody youth athletics, youth arts, youth culture, safe spaces for high school students to gather for inexpensive date nights, etc.? Maybe some canoodling, things that kids do these days, and all of those opportunities are being taken away from them? Will there be activities that serve all cultures, incomes, and most importantly, the larger public struggling to raise families in a very unaffordable environment that we have all across the city? Those outside of the privileged white community, represented by the homogeneous local advocacy groups, which I am also a part of. I am not dissing these people. They work hard, right? But you look around the room and it's pretty evident what happens. So I'm just wondering what the RDA is going to do to step outside of ourselves and to help the other groups represent these people. Thank you.
Next will be Janice Liu, followed by Jeff Sandstrom, and then Zach Scriven. Janice is here in person.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak. And what I would like to speak about as well is Ballpark Next. And to start off with, I originally got involved with my community council because of a parking issue. And now my involvement brings me here for Ballpark Next. And I've also become a board member of the Ballpark Community Council. So I have provided my input throughout this process, and the way I look at it is how does this reimagining of the site enhance the health and livability of my community? As you know, it is owned by the city and it is zoned public land. The stadium, it provides the community's identity as well as a sense of place. It also has value in the historical context that it provides. So the stadium is the heart of our neighborhood, and this neighborhood has a variety of housing types. It has single-family homes, it has multifamily, it has housing for seniors, and it does have some affordable housing. So I see this a unique opportunity to invest in public green open space for our neighborhood. The benefits of adding more urban green space is well documented, and it includes improving mental and physical health. It strengthens social connectivity.
Thank
It
you.
promotes
Brian?
It's
I'm
time.
sorry, that's it?
It's time. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just want to get.
We can accept more comments in writing too.
Okay,
And you can
and
send them to console.comments@SSLC.
In some of that, I already. Which has been passed on.
Next will be Jeff Sandstrom, followed by Zach Scriven, and then Amy Hawkins. Jeff's here in person.
My name's Jeff Sandstrom. I'm one of the Ballpark Community Council board members, and I live at 1496 South Main Street, just around the corner from the ballpark. I've been a homeowner in the neighborhood since 2001. Incidentally, I also worked at the old Dirks Field for Western Food Service, so this is actually the new ballpark still in my mind. 2 points. I am in favor of the Ballpark Next plan to adaptively reuse the stadium and develop around that. I think that option offers the most attractive inclusion for the most number of people in the city. I think that has the broadest appeal and the biggest benefit. And the second point, I don't feel like the public housing, the housing component meets either the criteria of community space or doesn't add to the homage to the baseball history or anything like that. I don't think it's an appropriate part of the development, and like to suggest that that be replaced with open space, dog park, community garden, etc. And I appreciate your time.
Next is Zach Scriven, followed by Amy Hawkins, and then Erica Carlson. Zach is here in person.
Hey, good morning, or good afternoon, board. I'm Zach Scriven. I'm a resident of downtown Salt Lake City. I live at the corner of 200 East and 300 South. I'm here to comment about the Rio Grande plan. I have 3 key points. Number one, despite the Salt Lake Central station being the closest to my home, it's just a straight shot there on 300 South, I still find myself going to North Temple Station because the Salt Lake Central station is cut off from downtown, ironically enough, by the Rio Grande Depot. Number 2, the east and west divide, we talk about it all the time. Councilmember Dugan can attest to, we were leaving a UTA local advisory meeting last month. We were stopped at the railroad tracks for like 9 minutes leaving UTA headquarters. But there's also a north and south divide. On the border of the Depot District, the 400 South Viaduct and other viaducts create a barrier. Like, you have to take the frontage road just to get to 6th West. It doesn't create a safe and welcoming environment, and it's one of the issues with that area. And third, at that same local advisory council meeting with the UTA, there was a mention of the $60 million investment in the S-line created a $2 billion financial impact. So while this project is an order of magnitude or more greater, it has the potential to truly transform the district and the state. So this is a slam dunk project, but we need transformative leadership, and it starts at the local level, and it has the potential to impact all of Utah. And so I thank you guys for adding the plan to the Depot District. And my time's done here. Thank you.
Next will be Amy Hawkins, followed by Erica Carlson. Amy is here in person.
Hello, thank you for your time today. My name is Amy Hawkins. I get to serve as chair of the Ballpark Community Council, and this is a comment on the Ballpark Next staff report. Perkins and Will completed a draft of a health equity assessment of the Ballpark neighborhood, and this is going to be incorporated in the final draft of the urban design framework. I'm so grateful that we are looking at the future of the neighborhood through this environmental justice lens, but there are some critical social determinants of health that really shape the experience of living in the neighborhood that need to be included. Our health depends on our climate. Over the last 50 years, Utah temperatures have risen at about twice the global average, and our changing climate impacts all of us, but it doesn't affect everybody in the same way. Please incorporate data from Salt Lake City's Urban Forest Action Plan. This plan also includes land surface temperatures measured by NASA in 2020 that show that redlined areas like Ballpark have the highest surface temperatures nearly a century later. A similar collaboration by local scientists, city managers, high school science teachers produced the Heat Watch SLC report, and it shows a similar thing about Salt Lake City's urban heat island effect. It specifically illustrates the need in Ballpark for factors like green space and tree canopy. We'd also like to see data from the city's parks assessment that measures the number of public green acres per 1,000 people. Please just don't consider the social and health disparities that exist today. It's what we're hoping to provide future generations. Please revise the health assessment to include factors in the built environment that could play a major role in establishing greater resilience to climate change in the Ballpark neighborhood. Thank you.
Next will be Erica Carlson, followed by Pariah Chimbandaram. Erica is here in person.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Carlson, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Ballpark Action Team. I'm here to speak about the Ballpark Next proposal. The Ballpark Action Team is an all-volunteer group of neighbors and local businesses who have come together to advocate for our community. And our group is really in response to the generations, I would say, of neglect and indifference that our community has experienced. The Ballpark Next project is an opportunity to rewrite history and to write it in the right way. What we want to see is more green space. We want to see owner-occupied housing. We want to see a space for local businesses to thrive. And we want to ensure that this process continues to have active community input, as this is a public asset that belongs not just to the neighborhood, but all of Salt Lake City. So we encourage continued community engagement on this process. And we are also looking forward to an interim use plan that I know the city is working on for what will happen once a plan is in place. Thank you so much.
And next will be Pariah Chidambaram, who is here in person.
Hi, my name's Priya Chidambaram. I am resident, homeowner, as well as have a public health background of the Ballpark community, and here to speak about the Ballpark Next plan as well. And I went over the staffing brief that's going to be given to you later today, and just wanted to highlight that there are a couple social determinants specific to the neighborhood and built environment that I believe could use some more analysis, specific to the crime and violence, as well as environmental conditions specific to weather and climate change. There's been recommendations just nationwide that increased vegetation and green space, potentially including roofs of buildings, could help mitigate this. And in the past year, there have been heat mapping campaigns that have been done across our valley and our city that highlight the need for this kind of mitigation. And another aspect I wanted to check on is the healthcare access. Insurance is mentioned, but not the access to actual healthcare facilities, primary care, things like that. I'd like to implore if you could consider maybe county health department access somewhere in the scheme of things, and also would like to echo Jeff's comment earlier about housing, and this is a very public land and has a really great opportunity in this part of our city, and it would be really nice for it to go to public-facing resources more so than maybe private resources. So that's all I have. Thank you.
That would be final register commenter.
I think I heard that was the last commenter. Thank you all of those that commented today. We appreciate you showing up, making your voice heard about this issue. We have no public hearings today, so we're moving to redevelopment agency business, and we moving to item C1, the approval of minutes. Need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the meeting minutes of September 10th, 2024 and October 8th, 2024.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the minutes by Board Member Dugan and a second by Board Member Lopez Chavez. Any discussion on this item? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition? Okay, this motion passes unanimously. We're moving now to item C2. And this is the informational item on Ballpark Next Urban Design Framework Update. At the table, we're gonna invite Lauren Parisi from the RDA and as a project manager, McKenna Holly, maybe, RDA project manager, and Perkins and Will Consultants. And it is your time.
Thanks so much, Board Chair Pui. I will give the time straight away to Mark Asnes, our consultant from design and architecture firm Perkins & Will, to jump into his presentation.
Thanks, Lauren. Good afternoon, board members. As Lauren mentioned, my name is Mark Asnes with the design firm Perkins & Will. I'm the project manager for the consultant team. And I just want to first and foremost thank you for inviting me here today to provide a project update for the Ballpark Next Urban Design Framework. Next slide, please. So this project is comprised of a multidisciplinary team led by the RDA. Perkins & Will is serving as the prime consultant, leading urban design and architecture. Kimley Horn is our structural, our civil, and our transportation engineers. David Evans and Associates are our public involvement specialists, and Victus Advisors are our public assembly economists. Next slide, please. In terms of project timeline, we are just a little past the midway point of this process. We have completed our design test fits, and we're at this stage where we are sharing them and getting feedback from our stakeholders and from city leadership. So we had our second stakeholder ideation session in November. We met with city leadership at that time as well. And really this phase of receiving feedback is culminating today with this update to the board. So we're really looking forward to getting your guidance and your direction so that ultimately we can get to a preferred alternative and then in the new year move into drafting an urban design framework, which is anticipated to be completed in spring of 2025. Next slide, please. So I just want to recognize that we're not starting from scratch. We are building on extensive community visioning and planning work that has been absolutely foundational. And that has really been our charge, is to bring the community's vision to life through an aspirational, context-sensitive, human-centered urban design framework. Next slide. And just as a refresher for the board, this is the community vision statement. The future ballpark site is an iconic, exciting destination for the neighborhood, city, and region. It is a catalyst for the transformation of our neighborhood, attracting people and development that uplifts and celebrates the area and its residents. Next slide. And these are the guiding principles that were established by the community. Neighborhood safety and activation, safety in every stride, connectivity interwoven, natural geography, be green, wellness, a culture of health, community-centered, a space for every face, and acknowledge the past, honor the neighborhood's history. Next slide, please. And I just want to very quickly acknowledge that a lot of the amazing design ideas that were generated as part of the community design competition for Ballpark Next have also made their way into these 3 design test fits. Next slide, please. So as part of this process, we have conducted 2 stakeholder ideation sessions. The first was in August of 2024. Our stakeholder group consists of ballpark residents, business owners, city department representatives, as well as other government and civic leaders. Next slide, please. The first half of that stakeholder session, we conducted a prioritization exercise where we asked our stakeholder group to help us prioritize the right, or what they see as the appropriate types of land uses, programming, design elements that they would like to see as part of this development plan. And we organized them around the 6 domains of social determinants of health. So for economic development, the prioritization was public market and food hub, ground floor local business, and amenities for residents. Under education, access, and quality, it was public library, and outdoor exploratorium, and arts and cultural workshops. Next slide, please. For healthcare access and quality, it was a produce market and fitness center. For neighborhood and built environment, wider sidewalks and protected bike lanes, neighborhood square, and mixed-use development. Next slide. And finally, under social and community context, it was an outdoor performance stage, a community gathering space, and a night market. Next slide, please. The second half of that ideation session, we broke out into groups. For each of those groups were assigned one of the 3 scenarios. Scenario 1 being preserve the ballpark, Scenario 2 adaptive reuse, and Scenario 3 removal. And what we found out when we looked at all of the input at the end of the session is there are common themes that were derived across all 3 of those groups. There was a support to celebrate the baseball legacy. That can be done in a variety of ways, but also a celebration and acknowledgement of the creeks that are currently buried underneath 13 South, and just a celebration of the natural context of the site. Improvement of 1300 South and to make it more pedestrian-oriented. Relocation of the fire station, keep it on the site, but bring it further south along Main Street. And then by complementing that fire station with, let's say, a public library, we can create a civic edge along Main Street. A lot of support for breaking up the blocks, creating a new community park space. There was support for keeping the Festival Street on West Temple, which was a part of the larger ballpark station area plan. And then finally, the node, the intersection of 1300 South and West Temple, really making that our retail and entertainment. Next slide, please. So board members, I walk through this so that you can understand how we are outlining our methodology to develop our 3 design test fits. We have acknowledged the community's guiding principles. We are overlaying the social determinants of health to take those guiding principles and translate them into tangible programming and land use and design elements within the built environment. We have engaged our community to understand the prioritized program underneath each of those domains of social determinants of health, and we understand the commonalities across these different scenarios that will ultimately become our urban design big ideas that will be integrated into our final urban design framework. Next slide. I just want to touch on a couple of those urban design big ideas. The first one being Stepping Stone Ecology Network. For us, for championing a human-centered urban design framework, we feel very strongly that human health and environmental health are inextricably connected. And we actually heard some of that today during our public comment. For us, Ballpark as public land, it really has a responsibility to be a part of the larger citywide ecology network and a local response to climate change. So really thinking of the Ballpark as a stepping stone of a place where migratory birds and native pollinators can go. It really is this geographic midpoint between Liberty Park and the Jordan River. So we see this as being a really integral part of a larger city network. Next slide, please. And then the next idea is neighborhood shortcuts. This framework is another amazing opportunity to take what is currently a barrier and really seamlessly integrate this site into the larger neighborhood fabric. So we have this concept of neighborhood shortcuts, which really bisect the site, create seamless access for pedestrians and cyclists to access tracks, educational anchors, and everyday neighborhood services. Next slide, please. In terms of our urban form and thinking about our height envelopes, as of right now, we're proposing to really concentrate our taller buildings along 1300 South with a gradual stepping down as we transition to the surrounding neighborhood. I will acknowledge that we have gotten feedback that maybe 120 feet is not the appropriate maximum height allocation, and in order to support different types of construction types other than potentially just type 3 construction over a concrete podium, which caps out at 85 feet, we could potentially revisit what that maximum height allocation could be. We're very much looking forward to receiving some guidance on that. The other thing as part of this height envelope is preserving and proposing a view cone that preserves the views out to the mountains. Again, thinking about celebrating the site and the legacy of baseball, and that like cartoon eye that you see on this diagram here, that's essentially home plate. So really creating this view cone so you can preserve those views out to the mountains. Next slide, please. And now moving into the structure of the ballpark. And I will just say that I am not a structural engineer. So I will do my best and I will channel my colleagues. But some key takeaways here is that as part of our structural assessment of the ballpark, it's in good condition. Yes, there is certain areas that are weathered and elements that have degraded, but that is to be expected for a 30-year structure that is exposed to outdoor elements. So with strategic investment, if the city was to move forward with either preserve or a partial preservation of this structure, it could continue to safely operate for many years to come. Next slide, please. The other key takeaway from our structural assessment was that there are 3 isolation joints across the ballpark, which create essentially 4 isolated structures. So this becomes the most logical and most economical locations for partial demolition and preservation as we think about our design test fits. And you'll actually see those expansion joints in that red line in our plan on the screen here, as well as in that photograph of the ballpark. The other thing I want to take note of is that the ground floor of the ballpark, and I don't have a photo, is concrete masonry. And what we heard from our structural assessment is that this is not a load-bearing element, and it could easily be peeled away in order to allow for more transparency and activation on the ground ballpark. Next slide, please. So now moving into the test fits. As I mentioned, we have developed 3 different scenarios. Scenario 1, preserve. Scenario 2, adaptive reuse. And scenario 3, remove. And in order for us to create distinctive designs for evaluation, we've assigned a specific community anchor for each. So for preserve, it was sports. For adaptive reuse, it was culture. And for remove, it was nature. Next slide, please. So sports as a community anchor, our target here is to invite a wider cross-section of the community to partake in sports and recreation. That can be professional leagues, collegiate leagues, amateur leagues, little league. Our aim here as part of this scenario is to have more people playing sports at the ballpark, creating a year-round recreational venue, and just supporting healthier, active lifestyles. Next slide, please. And here's the concept plan for Scenario 1, Preserve. A couple of key elements I'd like to highlight. The first is we're preserving the whole ballpark. The area that you see in red that's around the boundary of the ballpark denotes removing that concrete masonry and helping to create more transparency and activation on the ground floor. The field itself, we're preserving the baseball diamond, but we've also, per this graphic, created enough space for a regulation-sized soccer field. Our retail and entertainment node is at the intersection of 13 South and West Temple. West Temple has been fully transformed into a people-centric festival street. Our fire station has been relocated along Main as far south on the site as possible, complemented with a public library to create our civic edge. And we're helping to break up the blocks, creating more pedestrian paths and porosity so that we can bring more people into the site at all times of the week and all times of day, but also helping to create more compact urban development. Next slide, please. From a 3D view, our land use designations, we're really focusing the northern parking lot of the site around residential mixed use, higher intensity residential mixed use. The heart of where the stadium is remains public, and our fire station and our library create our civic edge while allowing for additional development up above for revenue generating uses to support those public uses. And then bringing on the southern end of the site, bringing residential mixed use back to create that gradual transition to the neighborhood. Next slide, please. This is an eye-level view of preserving the ballpark. Just a couple of ideas of what that could look like if you were to invest in this scenario. One is new entry portals. Two could be a glass curtain wall right at that prominent corner of 1300 South and West Temple. New wayfinding and signage, as well as I mentioned earlier, peeling back that concrete masonry to allow for ground floor local businesses and helping to activate the street. Next slide, please. So this is a project that we are drawing inspiration from. It is not specific to Scenario 1. It actually would be relevant for all three of the scenarios. It's called Square 50 in Washington, D.C. So specifically, this was a site that had an aging two-story fire station. The development was able to build a state-of-the-art fire station on the ground floor, but build a squash facility that is appropriately named Squash on Fire up above, as well as 55 units of housing up above. For us, this is a proof of concept that it's possible to integrate critical facilities like a fire station with vertical mixed-use development, but our team is going to continue to understand the viability of this for the ballpark site as we continue to move the project forward. Next slide, please. So now moving into Scenario 2, culture as a community anchor, which is really not a hard sell. I've had engagement with the ballpark residents and business owners. They are a very vibrant, rich, and close-knit community with great culture. So really thinking about this scenario as an opportunity to host festivals, support the arts, places for performances, celebrating local diversity, and really making the ballpark site a cultural landmark that fosters inclusivity, honors the past, and enriches the neighborhood. Next slide, please. And here's the concept plan for that second scenario. So most notable, you'll see that we have done a partial demolition of the ballpark, preserving that western segment of the ballpark around where those expansion joints are located. So That is being preserved. That's about, for reference, that's about 4,000 seats remaining. We are keeping, we have reconfigured, but we're keeping the ballpark field. It's now a multi-use field. We're still have enough space for soccer, but it can also serve as a place for outdoor concerts. It can be much more flexible depending on the types of events that the community would like to see here. We're also continuing to break up the blocks, adding more porosity, an iconic entry from 1300 South and West Temple, as well as this large kind of thick orange line, which becomes our public pedestrian promenade that creates our neighborhood shortcuts and brings people into the site. Next slide, please. From a 3D standpoint, when you look at it from, we're still preserving that residential mixed use on the northern parking lot, keeping the heart of the site itself for public use, you know, that retrofitted segment of the ballpark now being a concert, performance art, cultural hub. Our fire station and our library are still along Main with development up above, and bringing back that residential development on the southern end to transition to the neighborhood. Next slide, please. And this is that same view that you saw in scenario 1 at that corner of 1300 South and West Temple, but now you'll see some preliminary ideas of what that adaptive reuse structure could look like. We could have a new roof design that helps provide a deeper awning and eave for weather protection. It can be reinforced by timber columns to help both reinforce the structure itself, but also provide some warmth and architectural interest. Again, peeling back that concrete masonry to create opportunities for ground floor local businesses, celebrating that cut where the expansion joint is and this adaptive reuse with a glass curtain wall, so we can really celebrate the existing structure, but also make this into an architectural landmark for the neighborhood and for the city. And then by complementing this adaptive reuse structure with some new development and that preservation of views to the mountains, you create a truly iconic entry into the site itself. Next slide, please. This is just another view of what that could look like. It's on West Temple looking north. So just another angle of what that design could potentially look like. Next slide, please. And then this was a project that we drew inspiration from as we developed scenario 2. It's the Southwest Public Library in Washington, D.C. I'll acknowledge this is not an adaptive reuse, but what we did draw inspiration from was its playful roof, its extending of a deeper eave and awning, its reinforcement of cross-laminated timber, as well as this full glass curtain wall that really helps create a sense of safety and activation and just welcoming the community into this space. Next slide, please. Okay, scenario 3. So nature as a community anchor. We drew inspiration from Reimagine Nature, the public lands master plan. We do see that as public land, there is a responsibility to really think about this as a place of ecological restoration, a place for open space and nature, and connecting more people to nature within the ballpark. That's our community anchor here. Next slide, please. So in terms of the concept plan, I think the most obvious is the ballpark's gone, right? Which now provides us with opportunity for more development footprints, but those development footprints are now organized around a series of parks. These parks themselves would have a different palette in terms of ecological planting types, and it would also have a distinct type of programming. But the two I really want to draw your attention to is the Ballpark Square on the south side of 13 South, which would be our more public, people-oriented, activated type of space that could accommodate some of the programming that we mentioned and included as part of scenario 1 and 2. but also on the Creek Park on the northern end of 13th South, which is the big move here, is proposing to partially daylight the creeks that are currently culverted under 1300 South. So that's our big move here. Next slide, please. From a 3D standpoint, we're still being consistent with residential mixed use on the northern end and southern end, but now that these two parks create this bridge between 1300 South, there's the potential for maybe commercial uses in a different future market cycle, or maybe an opportunity for an educational anchor. This could feel more, it's certainly going to be public and open to the community, but is there an opportunity for a diversity of different types of uses here, especially in that heart of the site? Next slide, please. And then our inspiration for this scenario is Tanner Springs Park in Portland, Oregon. I'm not sure if anyone on the board has visited this space, but it's truly remarkable. It's a 1 acre urban park that really celebrates pre-industrial wetlands of this neighborhood. It is able to effectively manage and clean water. It creates urban habitat. It takes reclaimed materials and creates public art and urban furnishings. So this in and of itself is an amazing natural park. But I also want to draw your attention to looking out beyond and seeing how there's mixed-use development surrounding this park, using this as an organizing framework for different types of development. Next slide, please. So in closing, as I mentioned, we have shared these design test fits with our stakeholder group in November, and there was also a very successful Ballpark Action Team meeting yesterday evening. In terms of the stakeholder ideation session and some of the key takeaways that we heard from that meeting, there was general reception that we were going in the right direction, that we were aligned with what we heard from our community stakeholders at the beginning of the process, that they were aligned with the guiding principles that were put forward as part of the very beginning of this process. Some key takeaways that we heard was year-round community-focused activation is absolutely critical, prioritizing home ownership opportunities here at Ballpark, enhanced accessibility and connectivity, and integrated and sustainable infrastructure. So next slide. So with that, I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to provide you with an update. Here, I'm happy to answer any questions or clarifications. Looking forward to your feedback.
Thank you for the presentation. Madam Mayor, Executive Director.
Thank you, Mark and Lauren and McKenna. I'm sorry, I meant to do a quick intro, but it was out of the meeting for a moment before you began. So thank you so very much. Perkins and Will has done a phenomenal job with a giant opportunity in our city and a wonderful job of working with the community. We started this process almost 2 years ago. It's been an incredible journey. And I can't thank the Ballpark community enough for their engagement over these last 2 years. It's been a great deal of work, and I don't know that we've ever done a community-based development project with this much community engagement. So thank you to the Ballpark community members. Thank you, Councilmember Mono, for your leadership throughout. And thank you, Perkins and Will and the RDA for taking the community's feedback, building the guiding principles, interlacing them with the predictors of human outcomes. I'm sorry, tell me the social determinants of health. Human outcomes are part of that, I suppose. And giving us a design framework. Something I want to say is that even though it's been 2 years, we are as committed as we were on that day in January when we kicked this process off to this being a robust community-led development project that achieves outcomes that we've never seen in the Ballpark neighborhood before, and that could perhaps be models of ways that we do development in other parts of the city into the future. I also want to thank the hundreds of ideas that came in through the Ballpark Next design competition. You see echoes of those and some of the community feedback in reaction to those built into this framework, the three frameworks of urban design concepts that Perkins and Will has developed. So thank you to all of that energy and momentum, and I think that was a really successful kickoff process. And now we really welcome your feedback and your questions and the continued feedback of the community as we consider the options that are before us. I want to re-emphasize that these are concepts, these are frameworks, and they are potential. The design structures, the layouts are not necessarily what we will end up going out to RFP to ask for. We still want to hear what the community and you as the RDA board and the city council want and need to see in this project. And all of that input is what we will be considering and ultimately make a decision based on sometime in the first quarter of next year, early next year. So thank you to all of the partners, thank you to the community, and we welcome your feedback on this.
Thank you. Board members? Board member Mano?
Sure, I'll start. Thank you so much for being here, Mark and McKenna, and thank you, Lauren, and thank you for all your work on this. The meeting last night, I felt went incredibly well. I was really impressed with the turnout. Those thanks for the Ballpark Action Team, Community Council, and everyone else that helped put that together. I actually gasped when there was a moment when Erica, who was facilitating the meeting, spoke to us today, said, we want you to vote with your feet and go stand by the concept that you like the most. And there were about, I don't know, I'm totally guessing, but dozens and dozens of people that stood by scenario 2 and 1 or 2 people that stood by 1 and 3. And I was shocked at how united the room was around that specific scenario, keeping some of the ballpark, but really allowing the space to completely transform as well and bring in these new uses. And it's the scenario that I think had been gaining traction in some of the stakeholder meetings. Board Chair Pui and I had a little preview of this a little bit ago as well, and we're able to see that, and I think that's the one that I was drawn to. I think we were both drawn to that scenario. So it's incredible to see. They're all great ideas, and if I can be completely honest, I didn't imagine before seeing these a scenario where I would think that any of that structure was salvageable in a way that felt really useful. And when I saw them for the first time, I thought, any of these could work. Any of the 3 of them could work, but was very drawn to option 2. And I was excited to see that the community was also drawn to a similar option for similar reasons. So I'm very excited about this. I'll say, this is something that I really hope we can continue the momentum that we're now seeing on this project. And I think it'll probably be different than a lot of the development and RFP projects that we go after, in the sense that this isn't just land that we can say, private development community, what can you do with this? There's significant public infrastructure here as well, and so we're going to have to look at all of our budgeting tools in order to accomplish this, and I hope that we can see some really big, bold strategies for how to do that. This is an incredibly important part of my district, but also of the city as a whole, and I imagine this being somewhere as much of an economic driver as downtown Sugar House is, and other parts of our city, and I can't wait to see this transformation. So thank you for all of that work. I do want to mention what Mark did say. One thing, what I hope to see here is a variety of types of buildings, both public buildings, housing, mixed-use buildings, but also some building types that we haven't seen in other parts of the city. And I think that looking carefully at the building height is important. If we stick to the current heights that are allowed in the neighborhood, we may still only get the 85-foot tall 4/2 or 5/2 typical building that we're seeing throughout the whole city. And I think that it would be appropriate, and this is putting our city council hat, I think it would be appropriate to choose a couple parcels there and maybe consider additional height for those, so that we could encourage something a little bit taller There's a kind of a dead hole between 85 and about 150 feet that you really can't afford to build anything according to fire codes and things like that. So I think I'll just maybe state that publicly, that I'm open to looking at a couple parcels on this site that would even go above that in order for us to get a variety of construction types. I'll leave it at that for now, but thank you so much.
Board Member Dugan.
Thank you very much. I first have to have a shout out to Erica for facilitating the event last night. She comes with a lot of passion, she comes with a lot of energy, and she makes, I mean, it was incredible job from her from very first moment to the very end, and I really appreciate it. And kind of rehashing what Councilman Mano said about let's vote with your feet, because I was expecting it to be a little bit more maybe 1 and 2, maybe keep it and adapt it, but then when like everyone went one side of the room, it was like, wow, that was a eye opener. But it also, looking at all the notes on all the boards was also wonderful to see. I mean, there wasn't just an engagement like, yeah, we're going to move my feet over here, but here's the reasons why I'm looking over here, and here's my concerns of the other areas. But there are positive comments and negative comments, or not negative comments, improvement comments on all the slides. But it was just a wonderful event there, and hearing the engagement and seeing it, everything was in a positive light, with just, some concerns like, hey, are you thinking about this and that? I went in there thinking I wanted to preserve the whole thing. But then I was like, after the conversations and realizing that was 13,000 seats that we really don't need, what do we do with those? And then the adaptive was, okay, Councilman Mano and I were talking about it a little bit more. It's like, yeah, we don't need that many seats, but we do want to preserve that view to the west. And I really want to, and anything, I think the heights need to be addressed. I agree with there, but I also really think that the people, that view is so majestic to the west for me, however you do it, to make sure that there's a corridor so you can see it from the home plate. And the ideas of making it not just affordable living, affordable housing, but affordable living. If you can get out of your car, go to a store, go to a dry cleaners, go to the childcare, go to a health clinic without ever having to get in your car, but you can walk there, is a bonus to me. But I really appreciate the energy, and I appreciate the direction we're going at this point. So thank you very much for all the work.
Thank you. Board Member Young.
So thank you, and thank you for bringing 3 very different concepts. I'm always really appreciative to see the wide variety of what truly is possible, to really help us as a city work with the residents and the businesses and all of our partners to consider, so if all of this is possible, what makes the most sense moving forward? I will also say that one of the public comments really resonated with me, just related to the fact that Ballpark is the name of this community. So it is part of their identity, and I am very grateful in seeing the concepts, how you incorporated that across all of them, really honoring that history and making sure that that's represented in some sort of way moving forward, no matter what the plan looks like. The last thing I'll say related to the height, the component you showed that maintained the views of the mountains, that really resonated with me as an individual resident who went to the games, and I have so many pictures of sitting in the stands, looking out across the valley at the mountains in the distance. I really appreciated that. I think being able to honor that history as we look forward is really unique, and again, appreciated that you brought that piece forward. Obviously, from the public comments, I think that there's more, devil in the details in terms of what those next steps are. As a former science teacher, I appreciated them bringing up sustainability and making sure that we're being thoughtful about the environment, whether that's related to the migratory birds, the green space, and the effects on our mental state, just as individuals here in Salt Lake City. All of that resonated with me. I understand that more of that is to come as we look to further refine, and just appreciate you continuing to work across all of the different interests of the city to be able to find that middle ground for the ballpark moving forward.
I just want to highlight a few pieces, and I think they certainly were mentioned earlier today about. It's incredible to see the amount of feedback from the community and excitement. Over a year ago when the mayor led this charge of thinking about the future of this site, and seeing the community riled up behind some ideas, and you being able to incorporate some of those ideas. And it's hard. I commend you, because it's hard to please everyone and to incorporate every single good idea into a project. And it's beautiful to see that some of these plans that you presented or concepts of a plan, gosh, I don't like that phrase, that will get us to a place where we can solve some of the issues that this neighborhood has been asking, including open space, tree canopy, and working with the temperatures and activation and sustainability, home ownership, and I'm excited to see some of that. Also, to respect, the history that is there. So I'm very excited that to see that in your three paths. Like Board Member Mano mentioned, I was in my mind already sort of had an idea maybe how it was going to look, but then when I saw this in our meeting, I was drawn to one more than the other ones, and I'm impressed with what you were able to do, and I'm hopeful that the community feedback is going to show in the future stages of this plan. So that said, I am very thankful. I'm very excited about what the future comes for this neighborhood. So that seems to be the last wrap up for this. I appreciate everybody's commenting on this, and thank you for your time. We are moving on now to item C3, another informational item regarding accessory dwelling units financing program. We're going to get, they're already at the table, RDA staff, Austin Taylor from the RDA's project manager, Brown Seabright, project manager from the RDA, and Tracy Tran, senior project manager from the RDA, to give us a quick update on this item. It's your time.
Great. I'll just turn it over to Brown and Austin, but this is an update on our $2.9 million notice of funding availability that we put out to find a third-party provider to provide ADU construction financing for the community.
Great. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the RDA has put out this notice of funding availability to help us find a partner for accessory dwelling unit construction and financing, and we're seeking out a partner to help administer a program for us. We released this notice of funding availability back in July and closed it in September, where we received our proposals. Just as a reminder, we have $2.9 million allocated for this program. 1.9 of those are restricted specifically to the 9-line project area, with another $1 million that is unrestricted that could be used throughout the west side. And as part of our interlocal agreement, the RDA has an obligation for 3 performance benchmarks. One of those is to launch an ADU financing program by the end of next year, which will allow us to increase the portion of our tax increment starting in 2026. Next slide, please. Our review process for the proposals, which we received 3, began in October with an internal review committee that was made up of city and RDA staff. That group did initial scoring and ranking of the proposals. Those were then taken to the RDA Finance Committee, who reviewed the proposals again, were able to ask questions and get a bit more information and details of those proposals. They provided a funding recommendation, which we now bring to the RDA board. Assuming we get a positive direction on this, we would be returning at the beginning of next year with a formal term sheet to ask you to approve.
Next slide, please. So I will be telling you about the top-ranked proposal that's been forwarded for funding by the Finance Committee, and that is the proposal from Community Development Corporation of Utah. This offering proposes a program that has construction to permanent financing, as well as income and affordability verification. This program offers two types of loans. I guess it will loan to two types of homeowners. So one is a homeowner earning less than 80% of area median income, who can rent to any renter at market rate. And then the other is a loan to a homeowner earning greater than 80% of area median income, who will have to rent their ADU at an affordable rate to a renter earning 80% of area median income or less. And we did these things to comply with state code so that we could fund an ADU anywhere on the west side, not just within the 9-line project area. The CDCU is requesting the full $2.9 million, and they would use our money to pay for their administrative costs, as well as create a loan loss reserve fund, a grant fund, and a revolving loan fund. They propose starting the program next year and think that over a 2-year period, this program could finance between 15 and 20 ADUs. Next slide, please. Here are the proposal details. Let me just talk about the loan that they would offer homeowners. It's a loan of up to $200,000 with a 5-year term, 30-year amortization, 3% fixed interest rate, a $2,000 origination fee, and a period of interest-only payments while the construction is happening. The loan is set to be 5 years with the idea that the homeowner could refinance out, including the value that the ADU has created. But let's say the market turns, they can't refinance within that 5 years, there is an option to extend for another 5 years. The program also would offer a grant of up to $50,000, and this is so that a homeowner could afford to rent at an affordable rent, an 80% AMI or less. So that will help the homeowner cash flow the ADU. CDCU also provides landlord training and financial counseling. This will be required to anybody who takes this loan. And like I said before, they'll use this money to create a revolving loan fund, a grant fund, a loan loss reserve fund, program servicing, so administrative costs. They would do in-house affordability compliance, either for the homeowner applicant or the renter, charging a $200 per year fee, and a very comprehensive marketing plan, which includes advertising the loans online, through social media, in person through events, and community partnerships. Next slide. So we have a specific request for you as the board, and that is a straw poll vote to confirm the selection of CDCU as the funding recipient. And if this is approved, we would come back to you after negotiating some of the finer details early next year with the term sheet that you could approve through resolution. So that's it, and we're happy to answer questions and whatever you need.
Discussion?
Yeah, questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the vision and the desire to kickstart the ADUs, especially at different income levels. A couple of questions on just the financing it. I'm at 80% AMI currently, and I might be already at my 30%. I'm at the max where I could probably receive another loan. So how does this impact, especially if it's a 5-year term over 5 years, what would be the payments on this loan after that first year? Because I think it's interest-free for the first year, interest-only payments for the first year. So how does that affect my overall credit rating score? Because if I need to refinance it in 5 years, will I be able to refinance it in 5 years? Because I don't think as a person at that level of income, I can afford to pay $200,000 off in 5 years. And so I have a couple of questions there. And then tangent to that is also, this is at 80% AMI. Did we ever look at going just to 100% AMI, 100% and then both sides of it instead of 80% on both sides of it? So
Yeah.
two kind of separate questions, but the concern is, the first one is, will we get anyone at that income level? Because $200,000 is a chunk of change. It's 50% of basically probably their main house value, I would say, or close to.
So let me answer your second question first, and that is the question of why we chose 80% AMI as the threshold, and that's because of state code. So state code says that RDAs have to finance income-targeted projects outside of project areas, and 80% is that threshold. And then on your first question about paying off that $200,000, because there will be a large balloon payment after this 5-year term. The idea is that the ADU construction adds value to the property through both the construction value and then also the potential rental income from that. And so a homeowner could get an appraisal and then refinance, including that new value, and pay off the ADU loan through that. And there's that 5-year window, but let's say the market turns, values go down, there could be a 5-year extension to capture a refinance period at some point within that 5 years.
Okay, so your actually rental income could almost pay for your mortgage for those first 5 years? Is that?
Yeah, that's the idea, and that's one reason why there's that $50,000 grant option within here, is because CDCU wants the ADUs to be able to cash flow where there's a slight profit every month,
right.
That the rent pays for the mortgage and a little bit more to cover your property management costs as a landlord.
Okay, that's very helpful, because that's exactly what you need, is that cash flow, even if it's slightly or flat. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm really excited for this. That was similar to my question, was going to be refinancing and what those tools would look like. Do we have any other apparatus at the end of it? I could foresee just doing a quick calculus online to look at the end of the 5-year term with that balloon payment, if equity, or as you mentioned, if there was a market downturn, do we only have the tool of the 5-year extension? Is there anything else we could consider to help? I could foresee some difficulty for families, especially at that AMI.
Yeah, we don't. Right now, it's the main idea for how to repay that is through the refinance, and there's still a lot of details to be worked out with CDCU, so I think we could talk about that with them and see if there's any other way to pay off if they can't refinance within those 10 years. Did you guys have?
The only question I had relates to communicating to the neighbors and ensuring that there is opportunities to know about this in Spanish, maybe even assistance to the application process and what tools or not, holes we have found to ensure that this opportunity is available to everyone in the West Side.
Yeah, we'll absolutely want to include that in our marketing materials. Make sure it's in Spanish and English, and we do realize that financing is a barrier to ADU construction, but also the process is a barrier because it is daunting. Construction is complex, and not every homeowner knows how to do that, and so that is something we could contemplate including into this program as we work out more details.
It's also incredibly encouraging to be at this moment and this stage, since we started talking about this for a little while now, and thank you for all the incredible work to make this happen. I'm very excited about this program and to see these tools to help neighbors in this city benefit from gentle density, at the same time solve one of the issues of housing, and also ensure that those that are fight the push, the economic push for working class families out of our city by giving them a tool where they can potentially have deeper roots in our city. So, Board Member Dugan.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair. That kind of sparked the question about, so it's 10 to 15 ADUs. Is there and it's also we got two sides, 80% AMI less and greater. Is there a goal to make it 50-50 split? Is there a window that they're going to be applying for, and then the window closes? Because I want to make sure that, as Councilmember Pooh was talking about, the training for someone who hasn't been in this type of business before, of getting the financial means and then understanding all the ins and outs of contract loans and everything else. Is there a goal to do 50-50 on it, or anything else, or splitting up the number of loans we give out if we have more than 15 to 20 of them?
Yeah, we don't have that goal currently, but if that's a recommendation that you all have, that's something that we could bring back in the term sheet.
I would like to see that there's some type of a margin that I could see that we could end up with all of them coming from 100% AMI or greater. And I really want to make sure that we give the opportunity to those at 80% AMI and somehow work with them. So I would like to see some type of a recommendation on how we can make sure that there's equity in who's getting the loans, and that they're always homeowners who live in the homes, as you already require.
Let me ask this: how practical it is to work on that now, when we are about to potentially give you a thumbs up about moving ahead. I just want to know how practical that is to make sure that we're not completely delaying the whole process that took us years to get to this place. Okay. So I see. So that's a possibility. Okay, great. And that's a great feedback, and I appreciate that, because I think your goals are line up with what you mentioned. Line up with all of the things that we want to accomplish. So I think the RDA staff is looking for a straw poll to give them a go ahead. So anybody is willing to put a straw poll on the table?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to do a straw poll on allowing the RDA to move forward with working with CDC Utah on the ADU financing program.
Okay, all of you, show your feelings. Okay, it seems like we have a majority of the council giving you the go ahead with this. So thank you again for the work. This is a big deal. And I'm very excited for our neighbors to see this program come to fruition. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I was expecting someone else to tell me what it goes next, but I guess that's my job. We are moving to item C4 on the agenda as a resolution, Rio Grande District Vision Implementation Plan. And we are going to receive at the table our RDA Director, Danny Waltz, and Carol Lindsley, RDA Deputy Director, and Ashley Ogden, Senior Project Manager. And now is your time. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. So this is a continuation of the discussion on the board's request to take legislative action on the Rio Grande District Vision and Implementation Plan. So last month, staff proposed revisions that could be made to the document to address feedback received by the board earlier this year. All comments received last month have been incorporated into the document, and a revised draft can be found in your packets. There were ultimately 2 categories of changes made to the document, which I will very quickly run through. Next slide, please. So the first was a request to add content to the plan that speaks to the opportunity of burying the heavy rails that run adjacent to the district. The board indicated they were comfortable using the language proposed by staff last month, and that has been added to Chapter 4 with a call-out box that highlights the Rio Grande plan. So not this one, but the citizen-led Rio Grande plan. Next slide, please. Staff was also directed to remove certain pages from the implementation section, specifically pages 134 to 151, and any references to content contained therein. So that includes the bulk of Chapter 6.2, which was the RDA role in the Rio Grande District, all of Chapter 6.3, which was the governance framework, and 6.4 next steps, and all references throughout the document. So those changes have been made as well. Next slide. And last, so next steps for this effort, if endorsed using the provided resolution, which is also in the packets, RDA staff will continue to advance the vision and implementation plan. A few upcoming next steps include the pending rezone request. We are actively coordinating with adjacent property owners in the district, developing our funding strategy, and also designing the various public improvements. That's all I have.
Board members? Yep. Yes, Board Member Dugan.
I appreciate the plan. I think we got a great step forward here, and we have like 3 things coming together: the district plan, the Rio Grande plan, and the Green Loop. And I think we need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on all 3, because they all have great attributes that will work really well together if we allow them. But we also can't discount any of them and just focus solely with laser vision on one and not all 3. And we need to make sure that we do allow for that because this is a plan. And sometimes we would say that a plan does not survive the first engagement with the enemy. But it is a good plan, and you have to plan. But you got to be able to modify from that plan. And in this case, this is a great plan, but there's some other options out there. And so there are avenues out there that we need to make sure are still viable, and making sure our eyes are wide open when we go in here. Because there's some great stuff out there, and I appreciate this thing, but I also appreciate that there's the bigger scheme going on here. So thank you for this portion of it, and I look forward to moving forward on all 3 of those. So thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to express gratitude for engaging with the board on this and allowing us to give input and make some changes. I know sometimes those conversations are not easy or smooth, and there's ambiguity as to what the board officially is supposed to vote on and things like that. But I just want to share that I feel like our concerns were heard, and I appreciate that, and that goes a long way in helping me feel confident that this really important part of our city will be able to be redeveloped in a way that is considering as many issues and bringing as much sort of input and thought and forward thinking momentum in there as possible. So I appreciate you dealing with us and letting us give these inputs and make these adjustments. It really does make me feel heard. So thank you.
Anybody else? Do we have anybody motion to adopt on the table?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move that we adopt the plan as presented today. Is that good enough?
I think adopt the resolution.
Adopt the resolution. I move that we adopt the resolution.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second by Board Member Dugan and a motion by Board Member Mano. Any discussion?
I just want to reiterate again, and I know we had Chair Petro rejoin us. I just want to reiterate our concerns from the last meeting in regards to green loops. I'm willing to support this plan, especially because of the considerations, and thank you to Danny and his team for taking our concerns again. It still remains a concern, and so I look forward to having more conversations in the future with this cohort.
Okay. All of those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? This motion carries unanimously. Good job, thank you. We are moving now to item C5, leadership structure change discussion, RDA bylaws amendment. And we are going to give the time to Jennifer Bruno. No, Jennifer Bruno. Or
Well, I'm happy to respond to any questions with sort of background, but I think it's probably better to frame it as a discussion among you guys.
So how do we want to structure this conversation? Anybody wants to take the lead to start conversing over this? Someone has to. Board Member Mano.
Okay. They don't want to. I mean, I think I still feel the same way I did when we discussed this last time, that for me, I know under state statute, the redevelopment agency is a separate organization in the city, but I really think that as a combined city, greater city, we're stronger if we're able to work in conjunction with each other, and I think we see a lot of alignment. One of the first things that happened when I was as a council member was we discussed RDA really taking the lead on all development projects, and HAND, now Housing Stability, doing programming, and that was like a big conversation that I remember us having, and I thought that type of between the city and the RDA sort of collaborating, deciding who's best at what, and really empowering that group of professionals to focus on that thing that they're best at was really, I thought that was the type of conversation that was powerful, and so I guess I still am of the mindset that better collaboration between our leaders. This is not about administrative staff at all. It's about us working with each other so that we're not giving mixed signals when we act as the RDA versus as the council, and we're using the same guiding principles. So I still feel that way. I know that there's been a lot of conversation. I'm interested in those things today, so I guess I'll leave my comments at that.
Board Member Wharton, thank you for breaking the ice.
I think Board Member Lopez Chavez was before me, but I'll go next.
Oh, that's okay. There's not an issue with whoever wants to go first. I appreciate your comments, Board Member Mano, and the many conversations we've had last night. And unfortunately, I was ill last Tuesday, so I was not able to attend, but I would like to state my strong support to elevate the vice chair positions. I think in consolidating, as I'm understanding today, it's something that would hinder and limit our ability to conduct orderly business. I'd rather see the distribution of power amongst the four leadership positions that includes the council chair, council vice chair, and then the redevelopment chair and vice chair, and to elevate those vice chair positions. So I'd love to take that conversation today and talk about what elevating those vice chairs. I was under the gross misunderstanding that the vice chair was an active role already. Since it's not, I would think and determine that with the type of activity that we're seeing, North Temple, really in districts 1, 2, 4, and 5, where the RDA has cemented their plans, and we could go through that list today. That's where I'd like to see come out of this, and I'd hope to find support amongst some of the colleagues here today.
Let me jump on if you allow me, if you don't hold it against me forever. The vice chair positions are active, and they are very much used. But originally the conversation and the purpose for some of us to do a merger was to solve some other issues that wasn't necessarily to solve the vice chair job, but it was mostly to ensure like Councilmember Board Member Mano mentioned, some of the disconnect that sometimes happens between the RDA board and the council, and to ensure that we are sort of always in the same page about the implications for when we do something in one, what does it mean for the other side, and vice versa, and historical context, which is sometimes we lack on that connection. And I also read the letter that board member, our director Danny Waltz sent earlier today. I also heard the the mayor's thoughts on the table, before. I still feel very strongly about looking forward to ensure this solution, and it's not necessarily about quantity of work, but it is to ensure that this connection happens, and because there are four, we cannot be discussing policy together, and ensuring that these meetings can be held together on a constant basis. So that really is, in general, if I had to summarize, I'm sure that there's other pieces that I'm forgetting, but that was one of the main concerns we have seen, and being RDA chair for the last 2 years, the RDA chair doesn't have a lot of work, really. We have a little more additional work than their board member, but there is not that much delegation that needs to necessarily happen, except when I disappear for something else, and my vice chair takes the role and saves the day. So, yes.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your leadership and experience on this. As the most freshman member, this has been a great conversation. The next is, to me, to resolve that connectivity is to invite the chair into these meetings, vice versa, into redevelopment agency meetings and council meetings. Is that a resolution we could agree to?
Resolution?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, got it. Yes.
Yeah.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
So I think I've had the opportunity of serving in leadership for RDA and for the council, and serving a number of years not in any leadership role. And as a council member, the experiences that I've had not in leadership and in those roles, everything that you all have said, even the points that aren't like that are kind of in conflict, resonate with me. So I think that there's a lot of truth in all of those perspectives, and then I have, of course, an additional perspective on top of that. And so I think I've told all of you that I started trying to work on mapping this out for my own benefit first, and then to share with all of you. And I think that while chairs and vice chairs have had different levels of activity and inactivity, I think that at the core of what a lot of us are saying is that there is an opportunity there for more to create expectations of more leadership and more work for that group to share. And I think that we owe it to try to define that and try to make that effort first. And I think that this is a really good time to do that because of the things that the city's faced, the sort of evolving role of RDAs in state legislation, and other like iterations of things like that. So I think that we can take all of these shared points where I think everybody on the council is experiencing a certain level of frustration and feeling like we need to come up with a solution that's more workable among all of these things. And for me, a big part of it is efficiency, but a big part of it is in shared decision making and in improving communication with people that are in leadership and not in leadership. And it's also a goal of mine too to bring the two into more of an alignment, because we have a lot of different roles and relationships in the city. The city library is part of us, but it has a different governance structure. We have the Arts Council, which is partially a nonprofit that has a different structure. We have our enterprise funds that are a different structure. And RDA is in that mix, but I think more along the lines of like an enterprise. It's part of the city, and so I think that it makes sense to bring it more in alignment with the goals of the council, because we are the people that, we serve in that dual role as council members and as RDA members. So I think this is a good time to focus our efforts on that. It's something I would like to see at the beginning of next year, to make a priority. And I think it will give all of us, all 7 of us, an opportunity to kind of reflect on what we want to see, and then to come together and try to address the points where we all feel that we need to improve.
Young.
Yeah. So I too have gone back and forth on this. In the last meeting alone, you watched me process and like swing from side to side. So a couple of additional pieces that I would just raise from like a solutions looking forward standpoint. I do wonder about an opportunity to replicate another system that we have used related to legislative discussions, where maybe for the purpose of that, we basically have a system for those council members who are not on the legislative committee to be able to attend a drop-in that's hosted by our expert in staff. I've raised this with a couple of you, but I'll raise it for the rest of the group. I actually think a similar function could be valuable in terms of our vice chairs just hosting a drop-in related to being able to allow the other council members to come, get a kind of preview of what's to come in a smaller group setting, as well as be able to ask our questions and provide some feedback. I think it is a structure that is easily stood up, that can be pretty consistent in terms of making sure whoever is vice chair can choose a date and time that works regularly for their schedule. And then the thing I like about it is that it places the opportunity for engagement on the individual council member, as opposed to having it solely on the shoulders of a member of the leadership team, who then has to be like, how much, am I reaching out to everyone? Did I talk to everyone? It allows us as council members to be proactive and to say, yes, there are things I'd like to discuss, and kind of come to the table in a less formal kind of function. So that's one idea. I think the other thing I'll share is that a lot of times when we do like the chair, vice chair, there's a lot of reasons for that. You guys mentioned some in terms of redundancy, whether somebody has a conflict or something along those lines. There is another aspect to it though, which is the opportunity for newer members of council to be able to participate in leadership, to learn about those structures, to learn about those systems, and then to be able to make an informed decision about, is being a chair of one of these two, entities something I want to pursue or not? And if we eliminate one of those options, I do think that could potentially just kind of create a bottleneck, if you will, of individual council members who may be interested in those roles, but don't necessarily have that chance before going from being a council member to then potentially putting in your, insights for chair. So I will say that I want to be supportive of all of the council in terms of what our next steps are. I'm certainly not in a position of saying this is the only way we can ever do it in the way that we do currently, but maybe just taking some time related to advancing these conversations over the next year, staying with the current structure while we kind of figure out maybe some additional systems and supports to see if it is truly a systems change we need in terms of roles and responsibilities, or if we can address it through these other means.
I thank you, and I thank you, Board Member Wharton, for suggesting a path forward and for the thoughts about how to structure this conversation next. I felt strongly about that something needs to be solved there, and it's hard to pinpoint how. And to that conversation, I feel like your suggestion is well taken for me, as far as let's make a goal, from the beginning of the year to get to the bottom of it and to understand how to approach the leadership. And I have, examples now from the RDA staff, and I have examples from council staff and from ourselves that are conflicting on how leadership, the leadership structure may have affected the outcome and confused maybe the situation. So those examples from both sides are useful to understand what went wrong. So hopefully we can amend it, next year. So I'm okay with that path of putting ourselves a goal about looking into it and getting to a resolution next year.
Yeah. Just one more thing. Oh, sorry. Were you ahead of me?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, since this is our last meeting of the year, those conversations for leadership are going to be coming up. For me, this is top of mind when in looking at and thinking about leadership next year. And I just know that, I mean, for me, during this special time, my thoughts are often on power structures and governance models. And so I'm going to be thinking about that during the break, and I hope that all of us can do that too. And then when we do have our council retreat, I think that is a great opportunity for us to start the work on this. So I hope everybody will share in spending part of your holiday thinking about these important things. Yes. And yes,
under the
and
mistletoe.
Happy holidays to you.
That was
beautiful.
That got weird.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate. I think I've had conversations with everybody about this over the last week, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, I still think that consolidation solves a lot of problems and is the right way to go. But I have heard other people's concerns and thoughts, and I'm okay with us saying, okay, we're going to keep the same structure, but just make sure that we're coordinating better, that both the chairs are coordinating better and having those check-ins with each other, either attending each other's meetings or whatnot, and then making sure that we're doing a better job of communicating to board and council members that are not in any of the leadership positions, so that everybody knows sort of what's coming up, has a chance to give input on that, and that people aren't surprised by what shows up on the agenda or does not show up on the agenda. So I think that there are ways that we can solve a lot of the concerns that I have. I would love for us to continue the conversation and think through what is the most efficient and the best way to do that. But I think even if we don't move forward with a structural change, these conversations have been valuable in terms of at least me understanding when I was chair of the council or as vice chair of RDA, what are some things that council members feel like are going well or could be improved upon. And so hopefully these conversations, I know that I pushed a lot of them and initiated a lot of the conversations. So hopefully they are valuable and that we're able to incorporate some of these things regardless of changing the structure or not.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to say I appreciate the conversations. This has been, it's been tough because we have so many things out there. We have a lot of things going on here. But it's been nice in some respects to have disagreements with an open mind and conversations with everybody. As basically kind of reiterating what Councilman Romano says. Yes, he brought this forward. I was part of that. Then we had some great discussions and we kind of elevated our mind of like, what are the possibilities? And we came up with a lot of different avenues going for the same result. And I think what the path forward we're taking now, I think is the right one. Continue these conversations and following what Chris mentioned here is the right step. But I really appreciate just the conversations we've had and the dialogue we've had with each other across the board over the last a couple weeks. So that to me is hopeful in that we were discussing things together and looking for a good common solutions to make us better and move forward. So I appreciate the effort we've taken over the last few weeks.
Thank you. I think that sort of wraps up this item for the moment. So we have some goal setting to do and action most likely next year on what we decide we're going to be doing. But I'm going to be actively looking into this. I am very motivated to find solutions to some of those issues. So moving on now to item 6, there is not a report and announcement from the executive director. I think that we are okay with that. And then item C7, report and announcement from RDA staff. There is not, and I don't see him frowning, so I guess that's, could have anticipated that. C8, report and announcement from chair or vice chair. Vice chair? Okay, no announcement from me. The meeting is adjourned today, and we're going to meet soon. And I don't have, do you have a direction on when we're meeting again? A little later today. So stay tuned for when we are meeting for the work session for the council. Thank you, everyone.
Should we take a 5-minute break?
It's your decision.
We have a pretty tight agenda, so let's take a 5-minute break while I confer with the chair and.
Okay, thank you.